Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave with you. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for checking out the podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all you do for podcasting by being a podcaster. And I'd love to hear your show. So please, anytime, send me a message, howtopodcast.ca. Give me a link to your show. I'm always looking for another podcast to fall in love with, and I'd like to fall in love with yours. Aw, yeah. So send me a link, and I'd love to listen, and I'll give you the ratings and reviews. I'll do all that stuff for you. Debatable if it helps, but I like you, so I want to support you. So send me a link, howtopodcast.ca. I want to listen. I want to listen to your show. So if you're looking for listeners, I have my hand up. It's like literally, you can't see me, but my hand is up. It's my left hand, by the way. And it's raised. I want to listen to your show. So please, howtopodcast.ca. I want to talk today about speaking with confidence as a podcaster. I want to talk a little bit about, I think we've covered this in the past, but if you're new, hi, welcome. Nice to have you here. But there's a whole thing that happens in podcasting that I would love to address. Now, by no means is this a judgmental podcast episode at all. I want to bring attention to something that might be having an impact on your podcast and on your listener. And it's all around Upspeak. Now, what is Upspeak? Basically, it's when at the end of a sentence, you go up with your voice instead of going down to a finale in what you're saying. Okay, so you decide to go up. And a lot of people don't realize that they're going up. It just seems to happen. And I want to just call it out, give you some examples of it. And then I'm encouraging you to go back and listen to a couple of your episodes and ask yourself, am I doing this? Am I doing it a lot without even realizing that I'm doing it? So I'm just calling it out. Again, no judgment here, but just I want to just put it out there in front of you and say, if you're doing this, you might want to start working your way towards a solution that might be a little bit easier on your listeners. Okay? Let's put it that way. So again, no judgment here. Love you guys. I just want to bring this out for you because I'm hearing it in some shows recently, and I don't even know if the host even knows they're doing it. To be really honest, I don't even think the host knows. So let's talk about Upspeak here on the podcast. Thank you for being here. Let's jump in. I'll put a link to the episode where I heard this on another show, and it's quite an interesting podcast to listen to. The host comes from a radio background, and he loves the sound effects. Oh, how he loves the sound effects. He's really entertaining to listen to. But he did an episode called How Upspeak is Compromising Your Podcast Authority. And I'll put a link to this. And he does this really cool little thing in the episode, which is quite funny. And he uses... he's introducing somebody and he's asking them to say their name, and they say their name and then they say their name with Upspeak. And it's like, he can't get them to stop saying their name with Upspeak. Basically Upspeak, you're going to go up at the end of your words, your sentence, where you normally would go down. So think of a plane circling the airport coming in for a landing. And instead of coming in for a landing at the end of the sentence, when you would normally come down to land your plane, the plane goes higher. It just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. It's never landing. So he's encouraging us to, when you get to the end of a sentence, bring the sentence to a natural close and go down at the end of your sentence, like I did there. Instead of, when you get to the end of the sentence, you want to go down because it's really, really important to go down. In that moment, when you use Upspeak all the time, it gives off a little bit of an air of uncertainty, like you're not really sure if you know it or you believe what you're saying in the moment. And it makes your audience go, do they believe that? So you could say something like, I went to the store and I bought a bottle of ketchup. I went down. Or, I went to the store and I bought a bottle of ketchup. Now, which one do you feel is more of a fact and which is more of a question? Like, did I go to the store? Did I get a bottle of ketchup? Or I went to the store and I bought a bottle of ketchup. When we're speaking on the mic, we don't see any kind of period, commas, explanation points, question marks. And what we're saying is we're just talking, right? And if you don't script your show, you're just kind of going off the top of your head like I'm doing right now. I don't have a script in front of me right now. I'm reading to you. I'm talking to you. There's nothing here to give me direction on whether I'm going to end the sentence and go down, or if it's a question and I'm going to go up. And it's interesting because Canadians seem to be painted with a brush where we tend to go up, and they call it like the Canadian rise. I hear it from our friends in like Minnesota. They sound like Canadians a little bit. Hi guys. Hi. I know you're out there and I love you guys. They kind of sound like us a little bit. And it's kind of like a gallop to our voice and to how we speak. And a lot of times we have the Canadian rise. And Mike Myers talks about this, and he models some of his characters after the Canadian isms and how we speak up here in Canada. We have this natural rise at the end of our sentence where we kind of do the thing and we go up and then we keep going and then we go up and then we go down. And when we go down in our voice, that means it's your turn to talk. It's kind of a Canadian thing, and he makes light of it. He brings it forward, and it's basically true. So when I come to podcasting, I need to be aware if I'm going to go up, means kind of a question or something to ponder. And if it's a fact and I'm done talking, I need to make sure that I go down at the end of my sentence. Something to keep in mind. Do you upspeak? Are you aware that you upspeak? Have you ever listened to your own show to see if you upspeak? Upspeak and uptalk, it's basically a common speech pattern where sentences end with a rising inflection, making them sound more like questions than statements of fact. Upspeak can actually undermine your authority, and the clarity of what you're saying in your podcast can actually become distracting if it's overused as a podcaster. So I'm going to give you some strategies in this episode on how to help you reduce your dependence on Upspeak. Okay, again, no judgment here, but your dependence on Upspeak. Let's address that. Again, let's understand Upspeak. The definition, and I'll put links to all this in the chat as well, or in the chat? In the chat. I just came from a meeting. Can you tell that? Yeah. Not in the chat, Dave, in the show notes. Ugh. I'll put it in the show notes. Nice. Okay, so let's talk about the definition. Okay, so Upspeak involves using sentences with a rising pitch similar to a question. Upspeak involves ending sentences with a rising pitch similar to a question. There, I give it to you in both ways there. Impact of Upspeak. It can make you sound uncertain or less authoritative, like you're not really sure what you're saying, which is particularly important for podcasters who are aiming to establish credibility. So what are some ways that we can reduce Upspeak if we are overly dependent on Upspeak? Okay. How do we reduce it? I want you first to practice Downspeak, the opposite of Upspeak. As a plane lands, it comes down to the ground, tires hit the tarmac, and the plane stops. That's kind of how that works. If you haven't been exposed to planes before, that's kind of how they land. And that's how we'd have to do in our sentences. We got to land the plane. We got to come down for landing because we're going to run out of fuel at some point. So we got to land this plane. You got to land your sentences. End sentences with a falling tone. This conveys confidence and certainty. And I want you to try practicing by placing an arrow at the end of each sentence, if you're using a script, to remind you to drop your tone. So just an arrow pointing down and an arrow pointing up for a question. And try it and write out your script. Take your podcast and write it out and go through and see how many times you went up in a previous recording and how many times you went down. And just look at it. You might see a lot of arrows pointing up. Make you kind of go, wait a minute, I'm doing this a lot. And another thing you can do beyond identifying where you're going to go down with your speech and where you're going to go up with your speech is to over practice, to exaggerate the falling tone initially to get more comfortable with it. So you're going to hear that in my show if you pay attention to how I do my sentences, there's times where I really slow down and I end my sentence by letting it fall naturally to a conclusion. That's intentional. I'm slowing myself down and going to a complete stop. Instead of going to a complete stop, see, I want to bring it to a conclusion. Another thing you can do is to record yourself and review yourself. This is great for a new podcaster who's just starting out. You haven't even posted anything yet. You're just practicing and learning how to podcast. It's kind of why you're here, How to Podcast series, right? As you're learning how to do this, a lot of us have never been on a microphone before. We didn't go to radio school. We didn't do any of this stuff. We're learning this as we go, and we're just trying to do our best. So listen to your own recordings to identify instances of upspeak. Go back and listen to how you're presenting and if it's a problem or not. You determine it. Maybe ask some people to listen to your show. If you want to get some kind of response and answers from somebody who's not related to you and called mom, I would love to help you. howtopodcast.ca. I'll listen to your show. I'll count how many upspeaks you did and let you know in a loving way. If you want, let me know. I'd love to help you. Record and review your own podcast in your own voice and how you present yourself. And make note of how many times you go up when you probably should have went down. Reflect on how you can improve your intonation in future episodes. It's something that you can focus on, all right? The third part is you need to get the feedback. And that's what I talked about earlier, and I'm reinforcing it here. Get feedback on your show. So if I was going to go create a restaurant or a donut diner or a coffee shop, you better believe I'm going to ask people about the menu and let them try the stuff in advance to tell me if it's any good before I put a big sign outside and say, come on into Dave's House of Coffee. I want to make sure that the coffee is actually not just tolerable, but really good to the point where people are going to want to come back and have a second cup or tell people about my new coffee shop. You want feedback on what you're presenting on the menu and not just assume that you're amazing and not get any feedback. So as a podcaster, I think we just jump in and all we want is praise. We don't want anybody to tell us that, hey, you could tighten this up a little bit, or you upspeak a lot. You say the word so, speaking to myself, you say the word so very often. So as you're doing these things, getting feedback from an outside source can really help your podcast improve. It's not meant to be judgmental, and there's people in podcasting who are very judgmental. It's not that. It's getting feedback that helps you be a better podcaster, that help you connect with your audience better, and maybe remove some of the hurdles that make a listener go, oh, what is going on here? It's kind of nice when you can have somebody in your corner that gives you some loving, kind direction to make you better. And if you're interested in that, I always offer feedback, and I'd love to help you. Get constructive criticism to address your delivery. It's very important. People in radio do it. People in music get all kinds of reviews and things. Authors get reviews. Movies have reviews. Everybody gets reviews. Why not you? You need to be reviewed so that you know you're doing something right and it's impacting people. Get feedback. It's not as dangerous and as scary as you may think, especially when you work with somebody who actually cares about you and listens to your show, doesn't just bring you on and talk about your show, but they've never heard you. They've never listened. I actually listen to people's podcasts, by the way. So please get feedback. Another thing is to do some vocal exercises, which could help you with your presentation for your podcast. When you see a singer who can sing all night and it's like it seems effortless for them, they They can just belt it out. Like I listen to like Bryan Adams with his raspy voice. You're like, how is this guy still going? How is that voice still hanging, like still working for him? Like it just sounds like his voice is ready to just stop working at any second. But that's him. It just sounds, it's Bryan Adams. And the secret is they don't just show up, swig a glass of water and do their show. They treat their voice like an instrument. They have it finely tuned. They take care of it. They do warm-ups. They do a lot of things behind the scenes that you'll never see on the stage. But without those warm-ups and taking care of themselves, they would not be your favorite artist up on that platform, on that stage, singing to you. There's no way. So they do need to do some vocal exercises. And I think as podcasters, we don't. We just show up and hit record. And you'll hear it in somebody's voice when they're really tired, when they're not feeling well, and they push. But for your listeners, I've listened back to some of my episodes, and I can tell that I was not feeling it that day. Either I was overtired, like I was really exhausted, or getting over a cold. And it's kind of grating to listen to myself when I'm not feeling well. Protect your voice. Do some vocal exercises. Just go to YouTube, type in vocal exercises for speakers, and you'll see. Okay? They're right there for you. So do some exercises. Warm up your voice. And practice speaking with authority by using assertive language and tone. Don't be meek. Don't make yourself small. Sit up straight. Some people like to stand up when they podcast. Whatever works for you. But speak with authority. Speak as if somebody's here in the room and you're making your point. And you want to make sure that people really understand how passionate you are about what you're saying. Without coming off as fake and phony and a facade. You're not like, I'm really passionate about you connecting with your audience. Can you hear it in my voice? And kind of the last part on this would be all around mindful speech. And I just did it there. See, I went up. Mindful speech. Yeah, that was Upspeak. I just did it. Mindful speech and why it's important for a podcaster. Here we go. I just want you to understand that as a podcaster talking about podcasting, am I on the hill speaking down to mere mortals about, oh, look at me. I am the best in podcasting. Look at my awards. Look at my microphone. No, I'm just a guy. So I'm doing this in real time, just as you are. So just so you understand. Mindful speech. Be aware of your speech patterns during conversations and try to adjust them in real time. Like I just did. Catch yourself. Pivot, change, make a difference. Because if you just let it slide, you'll never, ever improve. It'll become a habit, and then a habit becomes a ritual, and that's it. You're done. That's you. The default setting of, well, that's just how I am, so I'm not going to improve because I don't want to invest in myself. It's up to my audience to deal with it. That's not really a good audience-centric focus to just make your audience fill in the gaps for your lack of ability or desire to make yourself better. That's no winning combination. You need to be better for yourself. Especially if you're going to speak in person in front of a live audience where there is no edits. You're going to want to be better at speaking. So be aware of your speech patterns and make real-time adjustments so that you're improving and you're making the best podcast you can make for your listeners. And then the other thing is to don't be afraid of silence. Use pauses effectively to add emphasis and clarity. By adding these little pauses in, it makes your audience sit up and go, wait a minute, what just happened? And that little silence used here and there is a great reset. It's a great attention grabber in the moment to bring people back to you and back to what you're talking about. Remember, most people are listening to a podcast and doing other things. They're not just focused on you. They're focused on whatever's in front of them in the moment. So anytime you can slow it down, give a break, reset the conversation by simply giving a pause, allows people to reconnect with you and what's coming up next. Some additional tips for podcasters on how to avoid upspeak in your podcast. I got 3. Here we go. By no means am I telling you to podcast like me. I'm just giving you some suggestions. So don't think you have to copy Dave and do Dave on your show. Be you on your show. But as I talk about in many places, when I come to podcasting, I have to turn up the Dave dial a little bit. This is not me and my resting state Dave. My resting state Dave is a little bit more subdued than this. I am not quite as animated, but I know that in this podcast, I got to turn it up just a little bit. I'm asking you to turn it up just a little bit and improve a little bit more than you would normally do. That's going to make you a better person, a better podcaster, and your audience is going to love you for it. So turn it up a little bit. There's 3 things I would like for you to try if Upspeak is your go-to dependence in your show. First, script your show. I don't really script my podcast. There are times where I follow some general points that I want to hit so I don't miss anything, but for the most part, I'm not reading to you. I have listened to podcasts that are obviously being read by the host. Sometimes the host is reading the words for the first time and, they tripping all over words. They're saying words that they would never have in their vocabulary. And they're like, well, I don't know what this word means, but anyways, and it's quite interesting to see them battle with words that is not part of their normal speech and how they would talk. And so they're reading in real time, not pre-reading, just reading it live, and they're stumbling all over themselves. Scripting your podcast is a great way to make sure that you cover all the main things and you can work through your content in a nice deliverable way, but don't rely so heavily on the script that you forget to be you. If you were out on a date with someone, if you were having dinner with your kids, you're not going to read from a script next to the plate. You're going to talk to the person in front of you. How awkward would that be for you to read to them? And you're out on a date, you're like, yeah, oh yeah, so nice to meet you. Okay, so question number 1. What's your favorite color? Question number 2. Where did you grow up? Question number 3. Oh, did you ever have pets? What was your first pet's name? Unless you're trying to get somebody's password. Don't talk like that. No, you're not going to read from a script. You're going to talk to somebody eyeball to eyeball. Otherwise, it's going to be a very short date. Or your kids are going to walk off and go, my parents are just losing it. Scripting is great, but don't rely so heavily on the script that you're reading to me. That's an audiobook, which I love. I love audiobooks. But when I come to podcasting, I'm looking to connect with you. So anytime you can jump off script and talk to me and go back to the script, fine. I'm okay with that. But talk to me. I'm right here as a listener. Scripting is a great way to help you to, again, identify where you want to go down in your voice and when you want to go up. It's kind of nice. You can map it out. Also, practice sessions. Record practice sessions before going live to refine your delivery. Before you meet with your guests to interview them. Start early. Go in and start recording yourself. Kind of get into the flow of how you talk. And make some notes. And then it's front of mind. I'm going to go down at the end of my sentence instead of going up. I'm going to use the word so less in my conversation. I'm not going to say I love it at the end of every answer. I'm aware of these things. So by being aware, I'm going to do less of it because I'm thinking about it. Practice, practice, practice. And then lastly, just around confidence building, work on building your confidence as a speaker. The more comfortable you are with your content, and with you as a speaker, the more likely you are to use less upspeak. Again, upspeak is kind of like an eraser, just like the word but. Not that but, the other but. The word but is a verbal eraser. I love you, but you're annoying. Okay, I've totally erased the I love you part because you just told me that I'm annoying. Your cooking is amazing, but I can't eat it. It's terrible. Okay, well, see, the but isn't a verbal eraser. And upspeak can be a verbal eraser for your audience that make you seem like you just aren't sure enough to make a statement and make it a complete statement, and it's a fact. Because you go up when you should go down in your voice. Again, if you're like, Dave, I just need help with this. I know I do this too much and I'm really struggling. So we can jump on Zoom. We will have a conversation. And every time you go up where you should go down, I'm going to wave like a flag or something and just show you how often you're doing it. In love, I'm not here to judge you. And just in love, saying, hey, out of that 3 sentences, you went up on 2 of the 3 sentences where you should have went down. And just having somebody there with you to kind of go, here's what I'm seeing, here's what I'm hearing, and open the conversation. If you need that, howtopodcast.ca. Happy to help you. So by implementing these strategies and things we talked about here in the episode around reducing your Upspeak for more impactful podcasting, you can reduce your reliance on Upspeak and enhance your authority and clarity as a podcaster. Instead of, by implementing these strategies, you can reduce your reliance on Upspeak and enhance your authority and your clarity as a podcaster. I know, I'm exaggerating. Say what you mean to say with authority, and don't give anybody the impression that you don't know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. You're doing this podcast for a reason. You are the go-to person. You're the person I respect, love, and trust as a podcaster. So don't give me any reason to think that you're not really sure about what you're talking about. Upspeak. Do you do it? Do you not do it? Does it bother you as a listener? Does it like, Dave, get over yourself? It's not a big deal. I'd love to hear. howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening, or thank you for listening. Glad to have you here. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the entirety of the episode, including this part. You know what? A lot of people leave right now. So we'll let them leave. Give them a second to go. Okay, now it's just you and me. We have our meetups that we do for the How to Podcast series. We do them during the week, and we also do them on Saturdays. So twice a week, you have the opportunity to meet other podcasters, just like you. Some people have just started. Some people haven't even released an episode yet. Some have been doing it forever. And we get together and talk podcasting. We want to help you in community to continue with your show, to start your show, to grow your show. So come and meet listeners of this show in one space on meetup.com. Again, through howtopodcast.ca, you'll see the links. It's completely free to join. Come whenever you have an opportunity to come. There's no commitment. You don't have to sign any waivers. You can just come join us. Come join the conversation. We'd love to have you there, because the only thing that's going to make these meetups better is you being there. So I'm hoping you will say yes. And you'll say, Dave, I'm tired of podcasting by myself. I wish there were people I could connect with that are fellow podcasters and share my frustrations with guests who ghost me, and my editing software is crapping out on me, and I'm just having this hard time. I'm just having a hard time coming up with podcasts, episodes, and titles, and all the things, and social media. And wouldn't it be great to get in a room with other podcasters and share best practices and learn? 3 of our 4 Saturdays every month are themed. So you have a topic, but that last Saturday of every month is open question and answer. Ask anything. Come meet a podcaster. Come enjoy the podcasting community through howtopodcast.ca. Come to our meetups. Can't wait to see you there.